They thought I was nothing more than their personal ATM, too blind, too desperate for love to see the truth. But what they didn't realize was that I had been watching, waiting, and when the moment was right, I made sure they lost everything. The evening was nothing short of perfection. A grand estate bathed in golden light, crystal glasses clinking in elegant toasts, and laughter, oh, the laughter, filling the air like a sweet melody. I had always thought these moments were real, that the people gathered around the lavish dinner table were my family, the ones who loved me. But then, in a single moment, everything shattered. I had stepped away to take a call, only to return and overhear a conversation that made my blood run cold. "She's too naive to ever figure it out. Let her keep thinking we actually care, as long as she keeps paying for everything." My father's voice, filled with smug amusement. "Honestly, I thought she'd catch on by now." My mother sighed, sipping her expensive wine I had unknowingly paid for. "But no, our little fool just keeps funding our lifestyle." The room erupted in laughter. Their laughter. At me. I stood frozen, hidden behind the heavy velvet curtains, fingers digging into the fabric. My world didn't just crack, it collapsed. I had worked tirelessly, built an empire from nothing, thinking they were finally proud of me. But to them, I wasn't family. I was just a wallet with a heartbeat. I could have stormed in. I could have screamed, demanded answers, made a scene. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed the fire burning in my throat, forced a smile, and stepped back into the room. If they thought I was stupid, if they truly believed I was blind to their betrayal, then I would let them think that. Because they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. I felt my breath hitch in my throat, my pulse pounding so loudly I could barely hear the clinking of glasses and the murmurs of conversation that continued without a care in the world. The warmth of the evening, the golden glow of the chandeliers, the soft melody of the string quartet, had vanished, replaced by a suffocating chill that settled deep in my bones. Their words echoed in my mind, each syllable carving itself into my memory like a cruel, unshakable truth. "She actually thinks she belongs here. Our little fool just keeps paying for everything." The weight of betrayal pressed against my chest, threatening to crush me. My fingers tightened around the edge of the velvet curtain, nails digging into the fabric as I fought to keep my emotions in check. A part of me wanted to storm into the room, flip the table, demand to know how they could look me in the eyes, call me their daughter, their sister, while laughing behind my back. But another part of me, the part that had spent years clawing my way to success, whispered something else. "Wait. Watch. Make them regret it." So I did. I forced my shoulders to relax, smoothed the crease in my dress, and stepped forward, back into the golden glow of the dining hall. Their laughter softened into polite smiles as they noticed me. My mother was the first to speak, her voice dripping with the same saccharine sweetness as always. "Everything all right, darling?" I nodded, my face a mask of calm. "Just a business call." My father raised his glass in approval. "Good girl. Always working, always thinking ahead. That's why you're so successful." I met his gaze, forcing myself to hold back the bitter laugh clawing its way up my throat. "No, that's why you're successful. Because of me. Because I had spent my life believing that if I gave enough, if I proved myself over and over, you would finally love me. But I wasn't a fool anymore." I sat down, allowing the conversation to shift back to its usual meaningless chatter, vacations they hadn't earned, investments they hadn't made, luxury they had indulged in at my expense. They had no idea that, at that very moment, I had already started planning their downfall. The next morning, I made the first move. "Jacob," I said as my financial advisor picked up my call. "I want every single family member removed from my accounts. Effective immediately." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That includes your parents, your brother, your aunt and uncle, everyone?" "Every single one." "Understood." By the time the afternoon rolled around, my father was on the phone with me, his voice thick with barely contained fury. "What the hell is going on?" he barked. "My card was declined at the golf club." I leaned back in my chair, feigning confusion. Really? That's strange. He swore under his breath. Fix it. Now. I didn't. Instead, I let them scramble. I let them panic. I let them feel, if only for a moment, what it was like to lose something you had taken for granted. Because this was just the beginning. Before I reveal what happened next, the moment that left an entire press room in stunned silence, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to fight for something you believed in, hit that like button, because trust me, this story is just getting started. The first crack in their carefully constructed illusion of wealth appeared faster than I expected. By noon, my father had called me 3 times. I let each one ring out. When he called a fourth, I finally picked up, my voice smooth, controlled, unbothered. What's wrong, Dad? What's wrong? He seethed. My card was declined at the club. Your mother's, too. What the hell is going on? I leaned back in my chair, swirling the coffee in my hand as if this conversation was the least of my concerns. Oh? That's strange, I murmured, mirroring the exact words my mother had once used when dismissing me. Fix it. Now. The entitlement in his voice almost made me laugh. After everything, even now, he still thought he had control over me. That I would rush to solve his problems, smooth over his inconveniences. I don't think I will, I said lightly. A stunned silence followed. Then his voice dropped, the sharp edge of authority laced in every word. Madeline, don't test me. Or what? I countered, my tone colder than ever. More silence. But this time, it wasn't the silence of someone holding back anger. It was the silence of a man who had just realized, for the first time in his life, that he had no power over me. I let him sit with that realization for a moment before ending the call. By the time dinner rolled around, the cracks had turned into full-blown fractures. My mother called, voice a careful blend of concern and condescension. Sweetheart, I think there's been some sort of misunderstanding. Your father and I tried to make a purchase today, and... There's no misunderstanding, I interrupted smoothly. I froze every single shared account. Cut every additional card. The only one still working is mine. Her breath hitched. You can't just do that. I already did. Madeline, listen to me, she said, her voice lowering into that familiar, sickly sweet manipulation she had used my entire life. We are your family. Family takes care of each other. Interesting, I mused. Because I don't remember any of you taking care of me. I do, however, remember funding your country club fees, your shopping sprees, your luxury vacations. But since you all seemed to think I was too stupid to notice, I thought I'd finally live up to that expectation and just stop paying. A beat of silence. Then, you ungrateful little. Click. I smiled as I set my phone down. By the next morning, the full weight of their reality had begun to sink in. Their memberships were revoked. Their credit lines were frozen. Their bank accounts, once overflowing with my hard-earned money, were now empty. But the real fun was yet to come. They still had no idea what I had planned next. By the next morning, the unraveling had begun. At precisely 10 a.m., my father called again. This time, I answered. Madeline, he snapped, his voice sharp, demanding. Something's wrong with the bank. My card was declined again. Your mother's, too. Fix it. I leaned back in my chair, watching the city skyline from my office window. There's nothing to fix, I said evenly. A beat of silence. Then, a low chuckle, disbelieving, almost amused. What are you talking about? I shut down every shared account, I said, savoring the way the words rolled off my tongue. Every single one. His breath hitched. I could almost hear the blood draining from his face. You did what? I cut you off. For the first time in my life, I had rendered my father speechless. But the silence didn't last long. "That's not a decision you get to make," he growled. "It is when it's my money," I countered smoothly. "Oh, but I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, according to you, I'm just some naive little idiot, right?" Silence. Then, he tried again, his voice measured, controlled. "Sweetheart, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is a mistake. Let's sit down and talk like adults." "Like adults?" I echoed. "You mean the way adults openly mock their own daughter behind her back? Laugh about how stupid she is while drinking the wine she paid for?" Another silence. This one heavier, laced with something I hadn't heard from my father before. Not guilt, no, never guilt. Fear. I let him sit with it. Let him realize, fully, that he had lost his grip on me. Then, before he could collect himself, I ended the call. I barely had time to put my phone down before it rang again. My mother. I debated ignoring it. But something in me wanted to hear how she would spin this. "Madeline, darling," she greeted me, her voice syrupy sweet. "There's been some sort of misunderstanding." "Has there?" I mused. "Of course. Your father and I tried to make a simple purchase today, and for some reason, our cards weren't working. Now, I know you would never do something so cruel to your own family." I exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of my nose. "You know what's funny, Mother? That's exactly what I used to think about you." Her breath hitched, but she recovered quickly. "Darling, this isn't necessary. We're family. Families don't just cut each other off. You should have thought about that before you made me the punchline of your little dinner party." "We didn't mean it," she rushed out. "It was just a joke." "No," I said coldly. "The joke was believing that you ever saw me as more than a bank account." "Madeline." I hung up. I could already picture them, my mother, pacing in the foyer of their mansion, clutching her pearls in manufactured distress. My father, seething behind closed doors, desperately trying to come up with a way to regain control. But there was no fixing this. No last-minute manipulation that could undo what they had done. And the best part? They still had no idea that this was just the beginning. 1 week. That's how long it took for their carefully curated world to start crumbling. At first, they believed it was just a temporary setback. A glitch. A misunderstanding that I would, of course, fix. But as the days passed and their cards remained frozen, their memberships revoked, and their access to luxury slipping through their fingers, the panic set in. They weren't just losing money. They were losing status. And soon, they were about to lose even more. That Friday night, I attended the annual Blackridge Foundation Charity Gala, an event reserved for the wealthiest, most influential players in high society. The only reason my family had ever set foot in this room was me, my success, my name, my invitations. And tonight, they would regret it. The venue was nothing short of breathtaking. Chandeliers dripping with crystals, tables adorned with golden accents, servers weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne. It was the kind of opulence my parents had always thrived in, the kind they needed to maintain their place among the elite. They arrived as they always did, draped in designer fabrics, smiles polished, moving through the room like royalty. Anyone who didn't know the truth would think they were as powerful as ever. But they weren't. They were standing on a crumbling foundation, and in a few minutes, I would burn it to the ground. When the host finally called me to the stage, the entire ballroom hushed. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's esteemed guest, a visionary entrepreneur, and our largest contributor, Madeline Carter." Applause erupted. My parents smiled, basking in my success as if it were their own. I took the stage, heart steady, every word planned with precision. "It's an honor to be here tonight, among so many brilliant, hard-working individuals who have dedicated themselves to building something real, something meaningful," I began, letting my gaze sweep across the room. "Success is a beautiful thing. But it also reveals something else. It reveals who truly stands beside you, not because they need something from you, but because they believe in you. The shift in the room was subtle, but I felt it. A ripple of unease. I continued, my voice steady. Unfortunately, success also exposes another truth, that some people will only love you when you are useful to them. Whispers spread through the crowd. My parents stiffened. And so, as of today, I am making a change. I am cutting ties with those who have spent years taking from me, manipulating me, and using me as their personal ATM. To those individuals, let me be clear, your free ride is over. Gasps. Murmurs. Eyes darting toward my parents. My mother's fingers clutched the tablecloth, her knuckles white. My father sat frozen, jaw clenched, barely concealing his fury. The mask was slipping. I smiled, because I wasn't finished yet. It's a shame, really. Because when people build their entire identity around wealth that isn't theirs, they forget one simple truth. I let the silence stretch for a beat, letting them hang on my next words. Without me, they have nothing. And just like that, I dropped the match. The whispers turned into full-blown conversations, guests leaning into each other, exchanging stunned glances. In the span of 30 seconds, my parents went from high society darlings to the biggest scandal in the room. I stepped down from the stage, feeling their burning stares on me. I didn't stop to acknowledge them. I didn't need to. Their world had just collapsed. And for the first time in my life, I walked away, completely free. By the next morning, the fallout had begun. The whispers from the gala had spread like wildfire, morphing into full-fledged rumors by sunrise. Calls went unanswered. Invitations were revoked. The very people my parents had once charmed, manipulated, and flaunted their wealth in front of were now treating them like a contagion, a reminder that in their world, power is only respected when it is maintained. And my parents? They were losing theirs by the second. The first real sign of desperation came mid-morning when my mother called. "Madeline," she breathed, skipping the usual pleasantries. "I don't know what you think you've done, but this has gone too far. The bank froze our accounts. The club refused to let us in. And now we're being humiliated." I leaned back in my chair, watching the city skyline stretch endlessly before me. "Oh?" I mused, a mirror of the feigned confusion she had used on me so many times before. "That's strange." Her breath hitched. "Madeline. Fix this. Now." "No." A stunned silence. Then, she let out a laugh, thin, brittle. "Darling, you're upset. I understand that. But you're being irrational. We are family. This isn't how family treats each other." "That's funny," I said, my tone turning sharp. Because I seemed to recall a different version of family. The kind that called me an idiot while drinking champagne I paid for. The kind that laughed about how easy it was to manipulate me. The kind that saw me as nothing more than a walking bank account. "You misunderstood." "No, Mother. I didn't." Another silence. "Madeline, we can fix this," she tried again, her voice lower now, more careful. "We just need to sit down, have a real conversation, as a family. There's nothing left to talk about." She started to say something else, but I ended the call. An hour later, my father tried. This time, he didn't start with pleasantries. He didn't even bother with manipulation. He went straight for control, the one thing he had lost completely. "Listen to me, Madeline," he growled. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this childish tantrum of yours is going to stop. You wouldn't be where you are without us." I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then, slowly, I exhaled. "Tell me," I said, "exactly what you did for me." Silence. "Go on," I pressed. "Tell me what sacrifices you made. What part of my company did you build? What late nights did you stay up working? What risks did you take?" Still, nothing. "That's what I thought. You ungrateful. Goodbye, Dad." And I hung up. By the end of the week, their world was unrecognizable. The house, the same one they had once mocked me for not fitting into, was on the verge of foreclosure. The luxury cars that had once symbolized their status were repossessed. The designer clothes, the extravagant jewelry, the lavish vacations, all gone. But the worst part? The people they had once surrounded themselves with, the so-called friends who thrived in their orbit of wealth and status, were nowhere to be found. It was poetic, really. They had spent their entire lives building an empire out of my success, laughing at me behind my back. And now, the entire world was laughing at them. A week passed. Then 2. Then a month. The silence was deafening. No more entitled demands. No more manipulation disguised as affection. No more carefully crafted illusions of a loving family. For the first time in my life, I was truly, blissfully free. And then, just when I thought they had finally given up, my assistant knocked on my office door, hesitation written all over her face. "Your mother is here." I glanced up from my desk, unimpressed. "Send her away." She looks bad," my assistant added hesitantly. That gave me pause. Against my better judgment, I let her in. When my mother stepped into the room, I barely recognized her. Her usual air of superiority was gone. The perfectly styled hair, the designer dresses, the gleaming jewelry, all of it replaced by cheap fabric and exhaustion. Her face was drawn, eyes hollow, her hands trembling as she clutched the strap of her worn-out purse. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I don't know what to do." I watched her, unmoved. She waited. Maybe for sympathy. Maybe for some flicker of the daughter she had once so easily manipulated. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Say it," I said, my tone calm. Her brows furrowed. "Say what?" "Say you're sorry." She hesitated. Her lip trembled. And then, finally, she opened her mouth. "You were never supposed to find out." My heart turned to stone. Not I was wrong. Not I regret hurting you. Just regret that she got caught. And that was all I needed to hear. I stood, smoothing out the fabric of my blazer. "We're done here." Her head snapped up, panic flashing in her eyes. "Wait." But I was already walking away. For years, I had fought for their love. I had given, sacrificed, bent over backward in the desperate hope that one day, they would see me as more than just a source of money. That one day, I would finally be enough. But standing there, watching my mother, a woman who had spent her entire life looking down on me, reduced to nothing, I realized something life-changing. They were never capable of love. Because people who see you as a resource don't suddenly grow a conscience when that resource is gone. And so, I left her standing there, still waiting for the daughter she had lost. Not because I had abandoned her. But because she had never truly had me in the first place. And that was the most satisfying revenge of all. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about self-worth. It's about recognizing when people see you as nothing more than a resource and having the courage to walk away. Madeline spent years believing that if she gave enough, if she proved herself over and over, she would finally be loved. But in the end, she realized a harsh truth: some people will never change, and the only way to win is to stop playing their game. Now, I want to hear from you. Did this story resonate with you? If you enjoyed it, comment 2 below. If it wasn't your style, comment 7, I want to know your thoughts. And if you believe in standing up for yourself and knowing your worth, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Your support means everything.